Is Washington's war on wealth working? This week we learned the U.S. is slipping in prosperity. We're now down to number 9 on the list, behind places like Finland and Norway. We were tied for number 1 just 2 years ago. Then add this. For the first time under President Obama's watch, the majority of Americans say our country is on the wrong track. John, who's to blame for this disaster?
Who's to blame for this is the war on wealth. Look, they're trying to make the playing field level out there, but instead of trying to make the poor richer, they're trying to make the rich poorer. That's working very well. Look, Sherwood Forest worked great in a fairy tale. Robin Hood was a thief. And the hypocrisy of this government to turn around and leverage our entire country's future, the biggest deficit in our history, and then turn to the banks and say, by the way, guys, we don't want you to leverage your business. This government is saying, do what we say, not what we do, and it's horrible and it's not working.
Christian Americans are saying that deficits and taxes and all this spending is worrisome to them. They really are kind of taking a war out on the wealthy in this country to fix the problems that they're creating.
You mean a war on the wealthy to fix the problems that the wealthy created? That seems fair to me. Cheryl, you referenced that prosperity index. What's interesting about it, the 9 countries that are ahead of us are countries that provide universal health care, provide a social safety net for their workers, support the balance of work and family. It's no wonder that we're number 9 because we don't do any of those things. So clearly the Obama administration is moving us in the right direction to really catch up to the rest of the world.
Christian, you get back to me with numbers and how the wealthy created the problems in this country, and then we'll discuss that. But
Christian left out the other thing about all those countries higher up on the list than us. They have massively higher tax rates than we do. Our country takes a smaller percentage of GDP as taxes than Norway, and all those countries are way socialist compared to the stuff we do. So if you want to go up that list, and I question how that list was created for this very reason, that's the way to do it, is raise taxes. Now, as for the tax increases, that's the best way to get out of a deficit. The problem, the reason why we're on the wrong track to this survey is we are running deficits in booms and recessions. You need to run surpluses in booms, and why I'm critical of the current administration, not the current deficits, it's the lack of planning to have surpluses soon with tax increases like those other countries on the list.
Jonathan?
I don't know, Jonas, I don't think it's about, is it this inflation number or that inflation number. I think what it's the root of it, Cheryl, is the philosophy of what guides the country. And listen, I love this country. I'm a property owner here. We vote with our feet. We choose to stay here. But there's no question that I think we've moved under the Obama administration, yes, but under the Bush administration and others, away from the rugged individualism, yes, the capitalism, yes, the private property rights that have defined this country, that's always made us different from Eastern Europe or basket case Southeast Asia. And, I'm sorry, Christian, but the rich, who I know you despise, they're here not to serve the public good. I think until that philosophy turns around, we're going to keep heading further and further down those lists.
Christian, respond to that real quick, sir.
Well, I certainly don't despise the rich, but you cannot escape the fact that the financial sector collapse rooted in the housing bubble was in part born by greed. And certainly greed on the part of many people
involved. Not to deadbeats not paying their bills. Greedy speculators.
It was people who weren't rich. That's why we got in the problem in the first place, because they didn't have the money to own the homes they did, and they are the ones that got us in trouble. Look, we all could take blame from this, but to point to the rich now as the way to bail us out of this is crazy. People came to this country, worked with nothing, built businesses, built empires. That's the beauty of the United States, and now you're saying basically that what they did is bad, and they have to give it all back to bail out the people that made mistakes. It's wrong. And Cheryl, may I add, that list was created based on blondes and blondes only. There is not one brunette nation on that list. I'm taking offense to it.
All right. Well, I'm the one that made fun of Finland and Norway, Tracy. All right, Wayne, on that note, a fellow blonde, I might say. Wayne, what do you make of all of this? I mean, is this the war on the wealthy that's created this disaster?
No. The problem is, and Christian, all due respect to what you said, the problem is that everything got too big. When you let the banks get too big to fail, then the federal government bails them out. You let the big auto get too big to fail, so you're bailing out the automobile industry. You get everything too big, then the only way that it can be dealt with is for the government to come in and have more regulation than it had before, because they've eliminated all the competition. What we're headed for in this country is not socialism. We're headed for fascism. Let me finish. We're headed for fascism, where the federal government is in cahoots with big corporations to prop them up over a period of time, and that's exactly where this country's going.
Christian?
Well, you know, I certainly think that we have made a huge mistake in not regulating industries over the last 30 years, allowing greed to be the primary driver of economic activity, that we're taking some common sense steps.
Christian,
Not regulating, not regulating,
to take
Christian,
common
not
sense steps to
competition.
change that is important
You
to do.
have over-regulated it so that you do not have a competition. Competition is the natural regulator, not the government.
No,
everybody, I'm going to give Christian last word because he can't get a word in at this point. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Cheryl. We have not had competition over the last 30, 40 years. When you talk about an unregulated market where the big are allowed to get bigger, that's not competition. That's false competition. And what we're trying to do now by having government involved in healthcare is to create more balance.
Christian, where was there not a regulation that could have solved this? All the regulation was there. It was not used. It was by lack of government being apt in this, not because of lack of regulation. We were regulated. It wasn't used.
The Blonde is in charge of the show. The Blonde's taking a commercial break.